Sure.
So I'd like to introduce Yuri. He's going to be giving a talk on Dash Plotly. He's currently works at Urban Stems, which is an online flower retailer. And he, after network, develops dashboards with Dash and Looker for data analysis of kind of their floral supply chain and logistics. And he also has a 6-month-old daughter, so I'm sure that keeps him very busy. So thanks, Yuri, for coming in and talking tonight.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. She does keep me very busy. Even kijken. So, in short, Dash is an open source. Dash is an open source open source tool to basically present data. So, like a dashboard is basically or a dashboard is basically like you project sort of like a simple website on the internet, which you can push like to your local computer, or like you can push it out to the internet, whichever you want. Real simply, like languages and libraries used now, obviously Python, but then like the other two low-level languages that are heavily referenced are HTML or CSS. And then, of course, with the libraries used within Python are pandas, which is data. So basically data manipulation or data cleaning or what have you. So that there's a ton of libraries data related that you likely end up using, because like a lot of Dash, how I use it at work is usually it's data cleaning or preparation of data, and then like you push it into your dashboard and like you use that as a UI or way to like visualize your findings or like whatever narrative like you want to present outwards within the company. Dash has an open source side and an enterprise side that like you can as an organization like sign up for. Like it's, I forgot what the fees were, but like several larger companies also use the paid version, which gives you some styling options and like options to like more easily create dashboards. I mainly use the open source version. I find it fits my needs perfectly, but the option is there if your organization chooses to expand whatever to take subscription. And then like Plotly is a library that is used to make graphs. So like you have, when you're on the Plotly website, you'll see a wide variety of graphs. And Plotly is basically used together with Dash, but like if you have other visualization UIs that you use, like we, for example, we use Mode at my work as well. With Mode, you can still use Plotly if you want to, but like it's just a visualization tool that like is very connected to Dash. And then Bootstrap is a library that I use a lot, and then basically you have the option to use HTML, CSS styling, like when you make your app, and you have the option to use some predetermined styling from Bootstrap, which then allows you to just reference the Bootstrap framework, and it makes it easier to just style your app, make it look professional, versus like that you have to write a ton of like HTML, CSS to like get your app looking professional, pretty. So just pull this up. So I'll just quickly write out like a simple app, but like I first want to start with the data. So like this data has already been cleaned. Like I just deleted, like use some sample data from work, but basically what you're seeing here is like these are all the short pronouns of like the I don't know how to say that exactly in English, but like the states, every state has like 2 letters that like have a reference to the state, and then basically that's this. Like this will allow you to like make CoreClip maps or like reference in your code to like states. And then the second one is just like a distribution center or node that we use. and I just use it for example purposes, and then this is just numbers. So like basically this is just a CSV file that I'm going to use for my Python app as a data source. But like what's most important for this data source is that like it's already been cleaned. Like you don't really want messy data going into the app because like it can really screw with your graphs or like your output and data accuracy. All right. Then we're gonna import some libraries. So like I'm just gonna import pandas, import plot, and the express SPX. The difference between Plotly Express and importing Plotly graph objects. The difference between Plotly Express and Plotly graph objects is that Plotly Express allows you to like use like graphs that are more simple. So like it's faster to get going. However, like the graphs that you select are not as customizable as graph objects. So graph objects, when you use it, it will ask for more inputs. So like you can do like in a couple of words, like a small sentence of code in Plotly Express, you'll write enough context for like dash to present to push out a working graph. But like with graph objects, you would have to write several lines of code, but like at the same time, it's a lot more customizable. So this allows you to just make your graph look more professional. Import dash from dash import PCC. That's components. Oops. I'm just I'm importing dash obviously, and then from dash I'm importing PCC. That's dash core components. This allows me to pull graphs in into the framework once you've set up your app. Okay, or HTML. Then from dash.
I'm sorry, were you talking to me?
Sorry?
Were you just talking to me? Kevin? No?
No, I don't think so.
All right, so now I'm pulling in the data that I just showed. So I'll just do with PD. So basically I'm calling the Panda library, say read CSV. As I had my data is in a CSV format, you can use Excel or whatever format you use to store your data. Like you just have to look up the correct way to pull your data in. But basically, SDD. I forgot to put the shortcut in there. So the DAFs, like now the data's in the app. So like I'll do two. And I'll do a short group by for my first graph. So I'll just say group by, and then I want to use the FC column in my data set. So basically what I'm doing now is I'm just saying like, I want you to grab all of the all of the integers, and I want you to like to sum them, but then based on every FC. So like every instance of Baltimore FC will then be added together. Like you'll get the total for like Baltimore FC and like the other ones as well. So this is basically what I'm doing real short here is just like some data preparation for like my first graph. Now this is a new, so just real short for pandas. Basically what I'm doing here is I'm loading all my data into a data frame. So like after this load, the DF is actually all the data. So like that's basically now my data frame that I can reference. So what I'm saying here now is I'm grabbing this data, and I'm saying I'm grouping it by the FC, I'm summing it, I'm resetting the index, so like I'm making it 3 rows, and then I'm making it a new data frame. So like the reason why I'm doing this is because I would still want to reference my source data or like my raw data later on when I'm working through it. So basically the output of this group by, I'm just storing it in this DF2 for now, so that I can reference it when I make my first graph, which I'm going to do right now. So then I'm just saying here, bar 1, just bar graph 1 is I'm going to plot the express, which I've imported here. So I'm just referencing plot the express, plot bar graph. Now I'm referencing the data frame. So this is basically allowing me to then reference columns in that new data frame that I created. And then I'm saying, all right, I want the x-axis to be the FC, and then I want the y-axis to be the orders sum. And then the color is basically the color of the bar graph. I want that to be the FC. I'm using single quotation marks. You can either use single or doubles, as long as you use the same quotation marks every time you're referencing these entities. Now, at this point, you have a bar graph. So like this bar graph is now an entity. So like when we would want to reference it, we can. So like I'll just quickly create the app itself. So I'll say app is dash dot dash name. So basically what I'm saying here is the entity app, which I'm going to reference all the way at the end, is basically a dash app. Not entirely sure what the name reference exactly supposed to do, but like I always use the name. Understand like the under the hood, Flask is used, and like it's a Flask property, but like I'm not entirely sure why this is set up the way it is. But basically every app that you use has this reference. Unless you do like a multi-page app or like something really different, then this would change. But for most of the apps, this would all be the same. So then I say like, all right, I want to look at my layout for my app. Is then HTML. And then I'm creating a div, which is string, and then a list. Open it up. So HTML dash. So I did something. So I'm referencing HTML, but like I did a lousy job of retyping this import. So basically now it's referencing this HTML as like the format in my dash app. So then I'm saying like, right, I have one main component for this app. And then basically you'll see me make more divs throughout the app. Basically what this allows me to do is like this allows me to reference CSS or like whatever other styling option I would want to use, and style the layout of the app in whichever way I want to. But like it's a very easy way. I would highly recommend doing it this way. Like so, just like organize it with different divs, divide your app up in sections, and then just reference. Like either if you have a pre-written CSS style sheet, or like you just want to like hard code some CSS in your app, you can do that within the div and keep your app organized. Now I'll grab a HTML dot h1. So basically, I'm just using a step. So that basically I'm referencing the HTML that I imported from Dash, but after that, I'm just referencing regular HTML. So I'm just using a h1 header tag here to start my header. So I'll say total shipments C. Then I'll say, and then I'll say like, right, I want to style it a bit. So I'll add bold text. It's style is from text file. I'm missing one. Bold. But basically, this is how you would style it if you want. So I don't normally use this as much as work. I prefer Bootstrap, but like I find this, especially when you're starting out, is a very straightforward way of like styling either your app or like your your presentation. So like now we'll take to HTML div ECC figure. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm referencing the Dash core components that I've imported here. And I'm saying like, right, this is a graph. The figure that I'm going to pull in is the one that I created here. So that's bar1. And I want this to be part of the app. Sorry, after every line, as like, of course, this is a list, you have to make sure that that's wrong. So like that, this component here ends here, and then like my new component starts right here. Whoops. All right. So just for the example purposes, let me quickly. All right. So this bit of code name is name. Oops. Name. This launch section is the exact same every time you make an app. So I usually just copy paste it, but for presentation purposes, I'm just retyping it. Bug equals true. Now, debug equals true for your app. This is a good way to keep it, as when you're developing something, like it will get most of your bugs out of your app. If you're pulling data in, you'll have that at times that like, all right, your data like has a flaw, and like now you're presenting out your Dash app and like your graphs are not projecting properly, but like it's not throwing an error. So like it will push itself out, but like now what you're projecting out what's wrong, or like you can see like, look, either my data is wrong or like something happened. You can actually turn this to false, and it will become a lot more sensitive, and you can actually see a lot more error codes in I'm using PyCharm, so like in PyCharm in my terminal, I'll be able to see a lot more like, right, like what's actually going wrong in my app. 9 out of 10 times, you're just making something simple out, keep it on true, so that like just for development purposes, it's easy to do. Okay. So I actually put this up to the side. Let's see. Oh, grab objects, let's go. I have it there. Reports. Lovely grab objects. So using this as an example, but so basically when I'm running it now, That's fancy, so I'm typo in there. Value of I is not. So right now I'm trying to run it, but it's showing me some errors. So just saying like, right, order is not a column in your data frame. Oops. And we create the error. It's like basically I had order here. So like when I ran my example in my terminal and I said like, all right, I want you to go. It says value of I is not the name of a column in the data frame. Expect FC order. So like these are the two columns that I have in my data frame, but received order, which is not a column. So basically like they just like, no, all right, I forgot to add an S here. So that's an easy fix. Basically like this is how you troubleshoot your app. Just open this up. Takes a second to load. Basically, what I just did is I ran my code in the terminal, and I'm just projecting it on my local computer. So, like the link is actually a link to my local. This is a local port 8050. You can use different ports if you have multiple apps running. I usually just use just this one, as it's a standard port. So, like this is the graph that we just made. So like these are the columns that you just saw. So we had the Baltimore column with all the different states, 2 to 6 were random numbers in that state. So like the total totaled up to 196. Now for Manhattan, you see the total. Of course, you see the total. This is basically a real simple like Dash app, but like this just shows that like the app is running. So let me just terminate the run. So what I made now, this is interesting. Like you have tons of course, data visualization tools that can like do this level of, you can do this in Excel, Google Sheets, whatever. Like you don't really need Dash for this kind of presentation. Now and then, like where Dash sort of becomes really interesting. Say, right, putting a break line in and putting another HTML div in my app. Say a list. Up. So for my new component I'm about to write, I'm just writing a separate div. So this div is in this div. So like if I want to style my whole app, I'm using this div. And like if I just want to style what I'm about to make, I'm going to reference this div and write any CSS that I want to write in that div. So in this div, I'll say HTML, and I want to have a label. So I'll say choose. Yes, choose category. Style. I'll just take the same style that I have here. So I can see it like it's throwing an error. I'm not entirely sure what's. Oh wait, missing a problem. Right. So basically, in this div, I'm putting a tag. So I'm just saying, like, I want you to choose an FC. Now, and then I'll do a DCC dropdown. So basically, this is just an HTML or like HTML or just a regular dropdown. Give it an ID. So like this is pretty important because like this is what you'd be referencing down the road. So like you would want every dropdown that you create or that you're planning on using have like an individual ID that is also a good reference to like what it is. So that like when your app goes to like over 1,000 rows, like you don't want to have a situation where like you're looking for something that like you don't remember what exactly the name was, or like it's named illogically. And now I'm grabbing the options. So basically what I'm doing now is I'm saying the dropdown FC. So like as in the beginning, what we saw was like we had 3 FCs in my raw data. So like those whole list had 3 FCs. Like I just want to give the user the option to select one of these FCs and then basically adjust the data that flows into the app. So then I'll grab this value. Say it's all. Next one. Okay. Basically. Bottom. So I edit one comment to many. Quickly spot which one it is. But basically the label is the label name in the dropdown. So I'm just here it is. So the label is a label name. So this is the label that the user sees, and the value is the raw data that is referenced. So this needs to match your data, the value, and the label needs to like it's basically just for reference for your viewer. Those two can differ, so they definitely don't have to be the same. I'm just copying this 2 times, then I'm just going to add the other 2 columns, the other 2 labels. But basically, these can differ because, like, you can, like for example, purposes. My second one is DC, so I can just say, like internally, we would use the reference DC. For Manhattan, we could just say man, or I don't know what a good shortening of Manhattan is, but like basically you could just like say, all right, I wanna shorten the name or whatever like my viewers would expect me to use. Now I'm closing the list here, so like these are the 3 options that are here, and then I'm gonna go. I'm not gonna like type all the styling that I added here because I think that would take a little bit of time. It doesn't really add that much value. But basically what's going to happen now is if I run this code, closing, and then I'm seeing here that it's referencing this there, so that's good. But you need another. So what you want is like, you of course want your parentheses to close. Like I'm just quickly checking like, all right, my dropdown needs to have like an open parentheses, close parentheses, like any lists, of course, like need to all match. And then you can see here, like, all right, my div reference is this. This is the closing parentheses, so like we're all good there. So that's fine. That's like what we just added now is basically a drop down button into the app. See, I just did something. I added this. So let me just quickly rerun the code, show you guys what I added. To see from rate module name. It's object. Whoops. So I actually made an error here. Just see, Joseph C. Joseph C. Object. Okay. Joseph C. Now you'll always find that, like, when you start writing, or I always find, like, you always have some errors in your code. It's like it's just good to quickly run through those. Okay. So basically what I'm doing now is I'm just adding, like organizing it in a way that, like, it's easy to read. So like then it's in this div, I have this HTML dropdown, which I'm opening here into choose FC style builder. Options, we don't need these backspaces. By the way, it's not simple. Text not followable. Not entirely sure what I did, but I missed a comma when I was texting it, so I'll just by example code real quick. Just want to run it real fast. Okay. So every time you relaunch your app, you'll open a new tab. So like if you're not careful, you'll have resilient tabs open. But like what we just created is basically this. So it's just like a selector button. And obviously, like when you're using this for work, you don't want it like to spread all the way across. But like with CSS, you can just style it so that it like looks like a normal button, and it's just like more functional, looks better, looks more good. All right. So just for time's sake, just go in here. It's like I'll just add another HTML dot ver. So this, I'm just putting in a HTML break in, so we have like a little bit of space between the graph that I'm about to add. So I'll say HTML, I want a div, and then I'm just going to close it. And that's that. Just going to do the one. Now this is the beauty of Dash. So like we'll do app callback. So the callbacks basically you're going to be using this a lot, like when you're using Dash. So like basically it is you have an output component. Let's call it part 2 because otherwise it's a little more confusing. And then you have my other component property. Property is. So basically what I'm writing out here is basically this is the output for the callback that we're about to write. So every callback that you're writing needs to have an output and it needs to have an input. So we're writing the input now, and the input is going to be a component ID is, I'll go up, and then we want to use drop down this one as the component ID. Just comment this out. Oops. Inputs. So basically what I'm doing now is when someone selects something in this tab, one of these 3 values, I want my Dash app, when it hits my callback, to use what was selected as input for my for my function that I'm about to write. Now, then I'm just saying value, property, very important. An app always needs an input and an output. If you don't have an input and an output, it's a static graph, and you can just do what I just did. So you can just make a graph, make it an object, pull it into your app, reference it, use DCC graph objects to like reference it as knowing that this is a graph. You're good to go. If you want to make it interactive, you'll need a callback, which means that you either like have a date range picker, drop-down menu, you name it. You need that to produce a value that you can pull into your app callback. You can have as many inputs as you want. You can have as many outputs as you want. It always has to be larger than one. That's all. Now then, here I'm just writing a function, so I'll just say build graph 1, and I'm pulling in the value into this function that I just pulled into my callback. Now then I say df graph. So this is basically the data frame that I want to use in this graph equals df dot copy. So you would always want to use copy, as if you don't, you can get instances that like you're actually using or transforming data in your original data frame. So like what I'm now saying is like, I want you to make a copy, and this copy becomes this new data frame that I will then wrangle the data for whatever I need. You don't want to have that like this creates another data frame that like starts floating around in your app with the same name as your original data frame. Like that's obviously not gonna work well. And then I do dffc, and then I'm saying like, all right, the dffc column in my data frame needs to equal the value that I just pulled into this function. Now, then I'm saying here df bar 1, and that equals bx bar is data. Oops. So now I'm grabbing my data frame that I just created. So this data frame only exists in my function, which I obviously wanted to do. I just gave the name just to be safe, but like if you have our spacing correct, this data frame does not exist outside of this function. So you're good there. X is a recipient state. So recipient state is a column in my data frame that I want to be the X column, and the Y column I want to be my orders column in the data frame, and then I want to say the hover name in my for my graph will be the recipient state. That's so, and then we'll close it up. Now, basically, what I'm now doing, just for example, I'll just say, all right, so I'm returning when this function is done. I want to return a DC graph. So this is kind of important, right? Like what I'm now saying in the return statement for my function, I'm already just saying it's a DCC graph, so it's a dash core component, which need so like when I'm referencing it now in my HTML div that I just created up there, I do not need to reference again like that it's a dash core component. So like it sort of now knows that what it's pushing back is a dash core component. I'm giving it an ID. This is not something that you would reference again. but what is important is this ID cannot have the same name figure as your output. So what I'm going to reference in my app layout is going to be my output for my callback. It's not going to be this ID name, but you still need to identify your graph. Right, is there. So then basically here, what I'm saying is like I'm grabbing the bar graph that I just created. That is this figure. So this figure is bar graph 1, or it should be bar graph 2. And now, like when this runs, it's going to be referenced. It's going to be, so like basically when I run this code and I select a FC, well, let's just run it. So if it's error, oops, 48. It's there. So this guy's so when I run it now and I select a, ID not found layout. Okay, so I made a mistake. So basically what I did here is, of course, I need to also reference in my div that I am pulling in the bar graph. So bar 2. Yeah, bar, okay. That's one again. So what I basically did is like the graph existed, but what like Dash said is like, even though your graph exists, there's no reference to it in your layout. So like I have no idea what you're asking me to project. Okay, yeah, hover name, and there you go. It's like I have a typo in there. Just spot. Anywhere. Hover name. This one is not. Any issues? Okay. So basically what you're seeing here is like it's just showing me like, right, like where I made the mistake. Now value X is not the name of the column in the data frame, expect 1 recipient state, FC orders, but received recipient state. So like I basically mistyped recipient state. State. It's Control V. And we're going to process components, children choose component ID, my output, object ID set. Layout. So what I'm doing, or what I did wrong, is I did part 2, so it's saying okay. Check it there.
Is it because children spelled wrong?
Yeah, it's gotta be it. Thanks, Dan. Let me just rerun it. Children. Place with children. There you go. Whoops. Yeah, I always have that one. Like English is like my second language. So like when I'm thinking and typing at the same time, like you kind of start to mess up my English. My English starts to get messed up. So basically, like what you're seeing here is like, all right, now I have I'm choosing an FC, so I'm choosing Baltimore here as the example. And basically what it's saying is like all the raw data we saw in the CSV, and of course like had the numbers assigned to it. Basically now there's a bar graph created with all these numbers. So like it's just filtering the whole data frame to make sure that like, right, you're only filtering, you're only showing the data basically for the FC that you wanted to look at. If you do not have this filter for this raw data set, if you don't have this filter, you would not be able to show it because like the bar graph would get too much input. So like you would not be able to like go to this level of detail. Then like I can just for really quick. So I'm just quickly gonna see if I can copy it. It's like, this is interesting. So like you have more flexibility than like what you would have in a normal presentation, because obviously right now, like I can, especially if you have several drop-down selectors, you can actually show a lot of complexity while you're presenting something, or like you're having someone consume the data. Yeah, I thought I was going to do that real quick, but so basically, like when I'm, I thought like I'll just quickly put a core clip map in there to like, because it's a little bit more visually impressive, but like especially when you do like, I feel like core clip maps or like visualization tools that are like not bar graphs, or like you're going through data as you're presenting, and like you can really show from different angles what's happening. Like Dash can be a very powerful tool. So like for example, I use it a lot for is like last mile delivery for FedEx, like different states. Like we use cut flowers, like okay, where weather can impact it, like FedEx delays inbound from South America or like from Europe, you know, like when the whatever. You can really easily, especially like when you use core clip map based on, you can like with a couple of transformations, like use zip code data. So like you can really powerfully show like, hey, in Ohio, last week it got really cold, and like look at our complaint rates and look like which shipments were impacted, like, and look what the correlation is like let's say, you know, like the number of boxes that were like delivered in the morning had like a higher complaint rate than the ones that were delivered in the evening, just because like people are not at home. So like, you know, when they receive the flowers in the evening, they just grab it to go inside, and like, but like if they're not at home, like you're looking at like, you know, complaints. So you can like really in a powerful way with like Dash, like show like those kind of like complex correlations. And then especially because if you add the right filters or like drop down bottoms or like whatever you use to like manipulate the data, like you can answer questions sort of like on the spot. Like so like in presentations, it allows you to like sort of like dig into like any questions or certain questions that like people might have. Obviously, if there's like an unexpected question, you're not going to code on the spot like I'm trying to do it now. Like, but like that's where it gets really really powerful. Like it really works well. All right, let me see really quickly if I can get this going. So, oh, I just. Of course, Go doesn't exist. Basically, what I'm just pulling in, I'm pulling in. I was just using Plotly Express for my other graph. I'm using Go right now, but I made a typo, so Go is not. I couldn't load it because it's like it's not imported in the library range. All right. So basically now I would see the exact same data, but now I have a core clip map of the US, and why you would want to use Go is like, all right, I would want this is cool. I have no idea what Wyoming, I'm assuming that this is. So like one, I would want to transform my data, so like that it says FC name and not like the pronoun, like the summary or the shortcut of it. But like this is the exact same data, but like now it really allows me to easily show like, hey, you know, like when I'm looking at Manhattan, like, all right, we only did whatever, like let's say these are complaints, like we can see that like Michigan is doing pretty well, Pennsylvania too. But then when we're shipping from DC, well, Michigan is still doing very well, but like now we see like several states are actually, you know, generating a decent amount of complaints. It's just a real easy way to like show data, like manipulate it on the spot, like Dash. So use a lot. I like it a lot. Yeah, that was it. Like just being time conscious, and so I know it's supposed to be an hour. So,
Any questions
I know
for
there's-
Yori, anyone?
yeah, thanks, Dan.
Just not seeing any questions in chat. Any other questions before we end, team?
I have a quick question. Is Dash normally used as a standalone server by itself, or is it embedded in with other web servers?
So I would say it's embedded with other web servers.
Oh, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like yeah, how we use, so like how I use it. So like we basically use we use like a firewall software, like it works. Like we project the website behind the firewall, so you log into it, and like this gets projected within like the Google framework. So like it's just a website that like you have to go through the company, log in to visit, and then like Dash websites like are accessible in that sense, and then they're running on our server, pulling the data from our database. That's how we use it. For personal presentations, I usually present it like locally, or like you can present it like outwards on a website, I guess.
Okay.
But that's kind of like what you would want to use it for. So like I haven't, so in my professional side of things, I haven't used it as much that I just put stuff out on the internet, because obviously my employer would not be happy if I start like projecting information out, like that everybody can view it. But you have that option. So like if you say like, look, I want to use this to show someone like what I can do, or like I want to make a personal website like as a resume or something of the sort, and then like project it out as a website, like that's very possible. Like you can definitely do that.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Like, I guess I could see it running as its own server, but then the URLs being pulled from some bigger website or something like that. That kind of makes sense. All right, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sean. Any other questions for Yuri on the presentation?